Begin by welcoming Tina Saaby, who is the city architect for Copenhagen in Denmark. Has been the city architect there since September 2010. And before that was vice president of the Danish Architects Association, and also is a member of the think tank City 2025, set up by the Danish Ministry of Housing, Urban and Rural Affairs. And I understand Tina specializes in user involvement, social innovation and new ways of organizing building processes. Tina, you're most welcome to Sheffield this evening. Please come and give your presentation to us.
Hello. How are you? Fine? Yeah? Now I've just been sitting down there, and it might be a little, if you can turn the light a little down on the images, I think it will help you for the whole evening if you can do that. Yeah. I was told to talk about placemaking and with the special focus for today on housing. And the question is, where will our grandchildren live? And this event is the third one, and it is about challenges. So I have tried to point out 7 challenges, and then I will come around both placemaking and housing and where does our grandchildren live. This is a new baby. This is the granddaughter of the man I love. This is Kirse, and she was just born the 13th of September. She was born in a city with 550,000 inhabitants. She is one of 1,000 new Copenhageners that arrive to the city every month. When we talk about Copenhagen, for right now, Copenhagen is often appointed as one of the best cities to live in, and I think we had the Monocle Prize for the first time. And when I read what the Monocle was saying about Copenhagen, they just said, and I'll just read it aloud: its residents are famously laid back and contented and enjoy an enviable design heritage. Its architects and designers are bringing smiles to faces on both sides of the Atlantic. Its quality and innovation. There has been massive infrastructure investment, new airport, world-class metro, a bridge to Sweden, an education system that prioritizes free thinking and social skills, allowed Danes the freedom to fail. It's just to say that no matter what, we will talk today about urban development and architecture, but it has a lot to do with society in general. So we have to think more across sectors in every way. So I think when we go years back, it was more sectors divided. But today we talk about human beings in another way that we have done before. And therefore, talking about good cities and where our grandchildren will live, we really have to be aware of that it has something to do also with our education system. It has something to do also with the health system. It has a lot to do with all the different processes and things that we are doing in cities in general. So just by focusing on urban development as a physical thing is in one way wrong. So we have to be good at discuss city development across every sectors in society. Before I go to the 7 challenges, I'll just point out to give a little of what we are thinking in Copenhagen, that we are coming from and where we are going to. I just went to the Biennale in Venice, and that Biennale this year is very special because it is a way of saying that the modernistic period is over. We will never look back, or we will never ask the question if we want to go back to that period. I think that we are in a shift in life and society today. We has been coming from a world that has been, where there has been a lot of It has been an industrial society, and now the society is more focused on community. It is not the worker city any longer, it's the city for people with knowledge. We have been coming from something that was more standard, then today we have a lot of more diversity. The modernistic period, we have come from a period where we thought that everybody was equal, and we thought that if we just designed the ideal city, the ideal neighborhood, the ideal family, the ideal lover, then everything would be perfect. Today we know that there isn't any ideal cities, and there isn't any ideal neighborhoods, and indeed there isn't any ideal family, and especially not any ideal lover. So I think that we have an understanding of that society has changed, and that we have to be more pragmatic and asking more questions about society in the situation than by trying to design some kind of utopia. I remember going in architectural school where people was telling me that in the modernistic period we were making research and observations about how women were making food in the kitchen, because by knowing that we could design the ideal kitchen. And then in a lot of homes in all over the world we have put in this ideal kitchen, not being aware of that women are different and that men also likes to make food. So it is a new shift in understanding the world today. And I think if we look at our grandchildren, it will be more user-driven, it will be more mixed use, it will be more densifying in the city, it will be more people working from land to city, it will be more mixed families, it will be more ad hoc based, and there will be a lot of more guideline and visions that finished master plans. So that's the situation right now. There is 7 challenges that I will focus on. The first one is daylight. We need daylight on a regular basis. This is one of our basic focus in Copenhagen when we talk about housing areas. And you can say that there is 2 dimensions in this. There is the daylight focusing on the outside, but there is also the daylight focusing on the inside. If we go to the outside, the way that we organize housing areas in Copenhagen is that we think that we want people to stay out longer. We have a strategy that our politicians voted for in 2010, saying that we want people to stay 20% more outdoors because daylight makes us happy. So therefore, when we design our housing area, we go and look at where will the daylight be, and then we put regulation on the daylight instead of putting regulation on the architecture. So we want the people, the client, both the private client and also the public client, to make diagrams showing where is the daylight, where is the wind condition, how can we be assured that people will stay outside 20% longer than they are doing today. But also when we go to the inside, we have a focusing on getting daylight into the buildings. We normally have a guideline saying that we have to have a housing building no broader than 12 meters. We have to have daylight from 2 sides. We have to have big windows, as you can see in this image, which is a new house for elderly people, so that the elderly people can look down on the streets instead of just looking horizontally. And we have to have daylight high at the ceiling so that it will come long into the buildings. So daylight is something that is very specific in the way that we design our housing areas. The next challenge is diversity. In the modernistic period, in the modernistic years, we thought that everybody was equal, as I said before, and today we know that they are not. In general, we try in the city to mix housing areas. We try to secure diversity in the functions, that kids can go or bike to school, that the people working has to pass the area where people is living, that the activities and design of outdoor spaces is diverse. We have a lot of tools in creating diversity in this way. This image I have chosen here is from Sluseholmen, a new housing area in Copenhagen. It is an area where there is a lot of diversity in architecture, you can see that. It is one of our successful neighborhoods in many ways. But we did an evaluation 1 year ago that very precisely told us that the diversity was not big enough concerning the amount of types of apartments and also of the different sizes of the apartments. So actually we have done the same mistakes that we did in the 60s. We have designed a whole neighborhood with 3 and 4 room apartments, almost with the same layout, which makes the diversity in this neighborhood not as big as the architecture is showing here. So we have a challenge here that we can't actually force the client with the rules that we are having today to secure diversity in types. So that is one of our really challenges where we try to talk with our ministry about that so we can get a new law system as well. This is a social housing area. And because the city is, our politician is having a vision saying that 20% of all housing in Copenhagen has to be social housing. And we pay 10%, the city pays 10% for social housing. Therefore, we can actually ask for diversity. So one of our criteria in the projects that we will choose has a lot to do with the innovation about urban living. This is a project called Dwelling Plus, which means that it's a very, very low low rent for this housing. It is there is a diversity in the apartment, but there is a basic need inside the blocks, so the people themselves has to maintain the area outside, and they also have to organize themselves inside. This building complex had got a lot of architectural prizes, just to tell you that social housing has to be as good architecture as private housing should be. Diversity, this is a new area that is in Ørestad, one of our new neighborhoods. This layout is having social housing in the middle, and around it there will be a lot of private housing. And this is an image of a new area that I think we will start to build within a month or two. The third challenge is resilience. Society is changing, climate condition is changing, economy is changing, so we need to make plans that can adopt a world that will change a lot faster than we have been used to. Going 10 years back, we did very precise plans that could only be the way that we have designed them to be, so they were not that flexible. What we try today is to have more flexible plans. We try to make plans that is more based on values than based on aesthetic. So it is based on what the situation will be. This image is from a listed building in a local neighborhood. Earlier it was a crematory, today it is a community center for people dancing. It's just to say that we try to focusing on transforming the existing building both into new housing or into new functions that will raise the local neighborhood. Resilience is also about how we can take care of the climate change. This is from an existing neighborhood where we took out 20% of all asphalt and just turned it into green areas that will both take care of the rainwater but also will take care of giving something back to the city with new green areas for the people living there. And this is in one of our new neighborhoods in Ørestad, where we designed a water system that is, which means that today when the rain is falling, this area is the only one that will not have water in the cellars. And it was designed 20 years ago. So resilience is also about adapting changing climate, the change of city in general. And it has also a lot to do with having the resilience plans for construction and for living in general. The fourth one is consistency. Segregation is a main challenge almost in every city today, and it will only be bigger. The last 5 to 10 years in Copenhagen, we have had a focusing on working with citywide strategies where we have been looking at our bike infrastructure and our pedestrian area. Today we have quite a good coherent city when we talk about bicycles and pedestrian areas. When we designed this bridge in 2006, we thought that 3,000 would bike daily, and today it is 12,000. So it means that people living in this area take the bike to work, and it takes less than if you were taking the car. So therefore, by focusing on making those shortcuts in the city and make a coherent city in the infrastructure is very, very important for the everyday life in all the housing areas. The challenge today is the outskirts of Copenhagen. So we have a policy that for deprived areas where we try to focusing on how we can make the same condition in the deprived areas as we are having in the normal Copenhagen. So that would be the baseline in this image, and that is one of the biggest challenges, that we can actually try to focus also on those areas. So we try, and this policy is very visionary because it is across. We have 7 departments in our city and administration, and this policy is going across every 7 of them. Then there is community as another challenge. I have been a part of this think tank under the Ministry for Housing, and we define the Danish welfare as being a society for insisting creating a society that is based on community. In Copenhagen planning system, we can see that in the way that we insist in all housing area, 1% should be for public use of all the built community or for all the built square meters. We do not allow privatizing anything in our housing area. And our local planning is looking very much of not putting fencing and not putting signs that say that this would be private area. But community is also about methods and processes. How do we discuss the city together, and how do we facilitate the city development? This image is from an event we did 2 weeks ago, where 2,600 people in this local neighborhood was having a dinner together in the street, and we were making a partnership together with 30 different stakeholders that was producing different kind of food from local farmers just around Copenhagen, and that is also to do with the city development. So I will say that it is still a big challenge for us to have more dialogue. And we know that when we have more dialogue, we have more conflicts, and there will arise more conflicts with more dialogue. So we need to have new methods, new understandings, new plan to embrace people. City planning today has more to do with facilitating and be more pragmatic and dynamic, and it is also a lot to do with doers, and it has a lot to do with experiment one-to-one. 2 more. The uncontrollable is also a challenge. I think and hope that Kirse, the granddaughter of us, will live in a neighborhood that less has been controlled. I think that city leaders and administrations like us has to loosen up. We have to have courage not to control everything. This is an image showing that there will be more nature in the city. I think that there will be more nature, and the nature that we will have in our future will be more uncontrolled. So today when we talk about urban spaces, all the nature is so controlled and it is so precisely designed, and often it is designed by building architects and not by landscape architects. So I think that the nature will be more wild and more uncontrolled, and it will not be. It will be a contrast to the building design in general. But the uncontrolled is also about how we organize the city. And this is, you don't have to read it all, but this was a secretary that we designed in the city, saying that we wanted people to get across sectors, and their job was to make things happen in the city. So they were not allowed to say no. So when people called them and say, I have an idea for doing something in the city, they should start by saying yes, and then they should help and facilitate that this would be something that we were doing. So we now have a lot of focusing on temporarity. How can we experiment just by doing things in the city? And how can we facilitate that people have something on their mind? They want to do something that would happen in the city. That is also what a good city and good housing area should be. This is something called plug and play in a housing area in Ørsted, where we designed the best parkour area in the whole city. So all the youngsters now come to this area to do parkour, and before they didn't know anything about this housing area at all. It is on a building site, so it will be turned down, I think, within 2 or 3 years. The last one is character. Today in every city the shops are the same, the inspiration is the same, the layout of the housing theme is the same, so much the same, and often the layout of the apartment is also the same as well. If we want to facilitate the diversity of cities and neighborhoods, we have to be much more site-specific to understand the diversity of history, of people, of cultures, and of sites. In our architecture policy, we focus on character as a main beginning of every project, and we also focus on the character of Copenhagen. This image is saying that there is a special character in Copenhagen. There is 300 years within those two images, and that is a part of us not having high-rise building in the inner part of the city, because we won't spoil this idea of the fairy tales by housing consistent with the towers and spirals coming up from the city. We want to keep that as a part of the storytelling of Copenhagen. And when we do high-rise, we try to design them as towers that is equal on every side of them. But character is also to have different neighborhoods. This is from Ørsted. A lot of people hate this area and think that is too much space between the buildings. But a city should have both places that we like, and it should also have places that we do not like. The special thing about Ørsted is that it is the wild nature coming very close to the built society. And this is very wild nature, I can tell you. So there is one character in Ørsted and one character in the existing part of Copenhagen and one character like here on Carlsberg. What we should be much more aware of is to design different characters and to have different areas so that everybody has something that we can identify with. So that was the last challenge. So I think that Kirse, my little grandchild here, will be living in a neighborhood with a lot of daylight and a lot of diversity, a city that is resilient and with a good sense of community and character, a city where there is a balance between the controlled and the uncontrolled, and a city that has a strong consistency. Thank you.